been a few weeks. Welcome to another episode of Absolute AppSec. This is episode number 73 with Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, with joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey everybody! Apparently Ken's forgotten his script after a couple of weeks.
I know.
We didn't start with "and we're live," and I don't know what's going on. Kevin, you may want to skip listening to this episode, right? So we're joined this week by Kevin, the one and only Kevin Cody. We're excited to have him back to talk cores and mobile and all the things. 12.4, the jailbreak, and the reason that I'm keeping all of my devices in my house on 12.4. So welcome back. It's been a couple weeks again. We had some personal stuff going on the last couple weeks. It seems we're on every other week. It's fine. We're on like an every other week cadence right now, but I'm sure we'll pick it back up. We'll be around next week as well, but I think I don't know if we'll do an episode from Australia or not. I guess it depends on how ambitious we're feeling that week, Ken.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you know what? We may. I mean, I know we land there. It's going to be weird because we land there on a Tuesday their time, but it's still Monday here on our time. And it's this weird Back to the Future. How does time work type deal? I don't even know. So would it be a Wednesday? I guess so it would be a Wednesday Australia time. I don't know. It'd be weird, but we may do it, whatever. So, But yeah, sorry. It was my fault. We couldn't make it last week. Like Seth said, I had some stuff going on. So anyways, all good. Medical stuff. Everything's good now. So we're back this week. Sorry, I botched that intro. I was, I hadn't slept much last week. So it's been I'm pretty brain dead at this point, but, I was just going to say, what's that?
It's fine. I'm on the road. Kevin's on the road.
Yeah, you two are from hotel rooms.
Yeah. Do you want a beautiful tour of, the Hampton Inn in an undisclosed location?
I'm also in Hampton Inn, undisclosed location.
Pretty sure I have a couch over there as well.
Hampton Inn.
The same generic corporate art. Oh, that's awesome.
That is hilarious. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah. So Kevin's in Detroit. Seth is in an undisclosed location somewhere in Gitmo. I don't know where he's at, but somewhere. I guess they have Hampton Inns there. Yeah. So it's good to be back. It's good to have. I mean, we were in the middle of a conversation when I was like, let's just continue that conversation. So we were just talking about if you're running a booth, if you've ever had the pleasure of being a vendor and
a booth babe, Kevin, right? Oh, we don't want to go down that road. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
that's hot potatoes. Yeah, it's hot potatoes. But yeah. So you were saying lock picking, and because we were talking about the fact when Kevin and I finally got to meet in person, like most good AppSec / security relationships, it all started online. So when we met in person, it was at CodeMash, and then at CodeMash, Kevin was there. He was stopping by the booth chatting, and the biggest draw, the thing that kept people there was the lock picking, and that came from you. And I had forgotten it when I was telling Seth or Kevin this story that that actually was Seth's idea. It just sort of came naturally while he was messing around with some lock picks at a booth.
Yeah.
You were about to tell us about it.
Yeah, it was PyCon a few years ago. I'm pretty sure that was that. I can't remember if that was Montreal or Portland or something like that, wandering in Thursday night, and the company that we were working for had paid for a booth, and the salespeople didn't realize that we had the booth that night and it was open, right? And all the attendees were walking by. So I sit down, I've got my bag. The only thing in my bag, honestly, was a set of lock picks and a couple of the starter sets. And so I just threw them out, and I'm sitting there picking locks because I'm bored, and people started stopping to pick locks, and I'm teaching how to pick locks, and we're talking about Python and Django security and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is pretty awesome. That's a good way to developers want to know, right? They're interested in how that actually works. So it's a good way to actually draw people in, and it's low pressure as well, right?
Yeah, there's no time to challenge. You're not competing against somebody. And also, one of the things that we had done that I think the iteration that really worked was using clear lock picks, where you just like can see inside, so you can see the inner workings and see what's going on as you're doing it. It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually teach people how it works.
Someone turned me on to these Master Lock lockout. Ooh. And they're made for like circuit breakers or like literally to lock things out, right? And it's a plastic body lock, and it doesn't even have a spring in the shackle. Like when you unlock it, you have to pull it up. So it looks really cheap and everything, but it actually has 5 spool pins and 1 serrated pin in it.
Oh, damn.
And it's only like $13 to buy because it's so cheap.
Wow.
But the inside is actually very, very difficult. So if you want to add a more advanced lock to your kit, these Master Lockout ones are actually pretty decent.
That's awesome. Good tip. Good looking out. That's amazing.
Someone told me, I was like, no way, I get it. Like, this is the cheapest thing ever. And sure enough, I haven't been able to pick it yet. And I saw someone do a teardown video of it. And it's actually, it's pretty legit.
Well, yeah, 5 spools plus, dang, man. That's, yeah.
For like $13.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone. Yeah, I mean, can you explain for those who are like, what's the spool versus serrated? Like, might as well dig in since we're talking about it.
Yeah. So, the basic concept of a pin tumbler lock, right? You have 2 sets of pins. You have your key pins, the ones that are actually keyed to go with the different size keys, those ones that are different sizes. And then you have I call them shear pins, but I've heard them called other pins, whatever it is. You have the pins that are all the same size, and those are the ones that you're trying to get above the shear line. So you push up on the key pins that are all different sizes, and you try to align the shear pins above the shear line. And when they have both aligned, then they turn, right? Well, the idea of these like goofy spool pins and serrated pins and mushroom pins is that if you have different types of pins for these pins up here, your shear pins, when you push them up, if you are trying to pick the lock, they'll like jam. Basically, they'll kind of go sideways, or they'll do a false set. And once it jams, once the pin goes in a place that you don't want it to go, it's very difficult for it to continue upward towards the shear line before letting basically the tension back go. They didn't really get into tension and all the other mechanics of lock picking, but that's the basic idea, right? Is that anything outside of a normal cylinder for those shear pins is going to cause some trouble. And specifically the spool pins and the shear pins usually have like 1 or 2 per lock. This is a 6-pin lock. It's cheap as heck, and every single one of them is a security pin, and that's what makes it hard to pick.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's ever dealt with even just like the spool set, like the trainer set, right? You always run into one of those that's super hard to like jam up and get into the right spot, and it's because of that, right? It's that whole security feature. Whereas, like, I mean, the normal just whatever pins that are straight. I don't even know what the technical term for them is. It's pretty easy to get those into the right set to actually pick a lock. So, but anyway, so lock picking on Absolute AppSec. That's what we're into now.
That's what we're into.
That's what we're into. I mean, yeah.
I got into it. My wife's grandfather actually owned a hardware store, and I inherited all his tools when he passed away, and I got all of the stuff to repin. And I was like, oh, this is an awesome trade. My friends are buying houses, apartments. It costs, $200 or $300 to get a locksmith in. I'm going to learn this. This is sweet. But you guys both know me pretty well. I drink a lot of caffeine, like a lot of caffeine. And little tiny pins and little tiny springs don't necessarily go well with shaky hands. So I had all the tools. I was ready to go. And then I went to, a con, and someone was sitting around picking locks, and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And they told me like, oh yeah, it's a puzzle. You're trying to solve the puzzle. You don't have the key to the puzzle, but you're doing, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So I went home and I had his like 3 or 4 lock picking tools, right? And that's kind of how I got started. And then it was just all downhill from there. Now I have hundreds of locks and Yeah. I'm actually doing like a lock picking road show for work, just as kind of a cybersecurity month team builder for our team at work. So that's actually why I'm here.
Oh, nice. You're sort of just like, is that so the lock picking, then that's all part of that?
Yeah. We have like lock picking, and then we have different events each week for cybersecurity month. And like next week, I'm going to be doing the juice shop hacking CTF across the company. So, but this last week was lock picking, and I couldn't quite get to all the offices in 1 week, so that kind of carried over to this week as well. But like I told you guys, I'm not going to complain. My company's sending me to different offices to teach people how to lock pick. And actually, in our Slack, my CEO, someone's like, "Oh, I can't believe I work for a company that's teaching me how to pick locks." And I saw my CEO reply in the thread. He's like, "Yeah, either do I." I was like, "Oh shit! Like, does that mean he doesn't like this? Like, is this not cool?" But then he gave me a big smile. So.
Oh, gotcha. So, wink and a nod. That'll work.
I guess.
Have you ever gotten caffeine poisoning? I'm saying this because I think this might have happened to me recently in Amsterdam. So I'm curious if you had too much caffeine.
I don't think so. What were the effects?
Oh, I mean, nausea, like going to the bathrooms, cramps, like, just heart rate going out, off the charts, just like sweaty, but then cold, like just generally all the bad stuff. But then my wife did get sick the next night and like similar stuff. So I think maybe it wasn't. I don't know. It's like you don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's just
Kind of sounds like a bad Tuesday to me. So maybe every week. I don't know.
Man, that was fun teaching a whole course with that going on. Yeah. No, but if you drink that much caffeine, I was just curious if that had ever happened to you. But it doesn't sound like it. Sounds like you've got it under control.
One time when I was a senior in high school, I tried to do the Super Troopers move, where I chugged the whole bottle of syrup. And like stupid high school party tricks. And yeah, that was probably the worst. Like sugar shock, too afraid to have it come out any end, just like in bed shaking. Like, yeah, it was that was not good. Don't drink a whole bottle of syrup. That's a bad idea.
Hey, it looks like Tim is on, by the way, the fellow you did your CORS research and talk with.
He tuned in like, oh yeah, let's talk CORS, and he hears me talking about syrup, and he's really confused.
Yeah. Just kidding. We're talking lock picking, Tim. Just for you.
I can send him a link. I'm thinking about sending him a link.
No.
I don't know if you guys
if anybody's interested in lock picking, like tool, I can't even remember what it stands for, but TOOOL is a great organization that teaches you how locks are actually put together, how to pick locks, and then also the laws around having lock picking tools, because that's kind of important depending on where you're traveling to and where you're trying to teach other people to do it, right? So not that it has a lot to do with AppSec, right? Or CORS or mobile security, but yeah, it
is that like physical manifestation of hacking, right? And I think that's the draw of people and why it's such a fun thing. And then the whole like physical security, lineage and that whole thing. So yeah, I get why it's a draw, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Like I enjoy like getting a new like lock and then sitting there during conference calls trying to pick it over and over and over until you get it down so much that it's almost muscle memory, and then you're like, all right, I got to throw that one away because it's not useful anymore. But
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. But I mean, there's quite a few experts out there in the security space that do like application or network security or vulnerability, whatever, right? Research that are big lock pickers. The whole contest at DEF CON or any of the B-Sides event nowadays are pretty cool to watch. The guys that can do things and can do like multiple locks in sub 5 seconds or whatever it is. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it was it might have been last Christmas. I think it was. Chris Gates made for me these keys. There's There's, let's see, there's ones for like one of those cheapy cabinet, like generic cheapy cabinets, and these different. He gave me the printouts of what the keys actually do, like the things that get you into the common things. Like there's elevator keys. It's just super awesome. Like, and it's from Deviant Ollam's, from his list, and I have the paperwork for it. Yeah, but I guess he's got a huge like a list of common keys that you can. So you can go and you can get the schematics and cut them, and then just have a key ring like this of generic keys. They get into stuff. So I don't know where to get them.
So why do you have those again? Like what is it you're trying to do?
Don't judge me. Don't be judgy.
Too late.
Another tool in the belt.
Another tool.
You know what? Hold on though. This was shown at, according to his paperwork, Wild West Hacking Fest. Boom! Gotcha, Seth. Wait. Did I knock you? Wait. What's the one where you're at? Is it not Wild West?
No. Nice try.
What is it? What is it?
It was Hack West.
Hack West. Man, you guys know I have not slept much in like a week, so forgive me.
That's okay. Let's switch over. Let's talk about cores. I want to talk about cores because I watched the talk from you and Tim, Kevin, and like I mean we should do more formal introductions because it's been a little while since we've had you on the podcast. At Kev Cody on Twitter. Kevin Cody works for Argus now. Is we cool to say that?
Argo.
Wow. Again, I'm traveling, and I may or may not have been at a bar before we did this, so sorry about that. Argo. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll jump into the cores talk and what you do, what the research was that you and Tim dove into.
Yeah, I'm basically a penetration tester for Argo. I won't go too much into my day-to-day, but what Argo is, it's a autonomous vehicle firm. We make sensors and driving units that our goal is to have autonomous, fleet vehicles that are out there helping the greater good. If you're interested in autonomy in general, I highly recommend the book Autonomy: The Race for a Driverless Car. It's an awesome book. There's a lot of lineage in my company specifically, but also in Pittsburgh. And you guys know I'm a big hometown fan. Pittsburgh with Carnegie Mellon is kind of the reason we're even on the AV map right now, autonomous vehicle map. We have my company, Argo. We have Uber's advanced technology group. We have Aptiv. We have Aurora, and others all have presence in Pittsburgh because of Carnegie Mellon and the DARPA Grand Challenge and Urban Grand Challenge that kind of started the whole autonomous vehicle literal race, right? It was a literal race.
Well, they still do the race, don't they? In the middle of the desert, the whole challenge, or is it no longer a thing?
There was two back to back. I think it was 2004, 2005, or 2006, and then
they haven't done it since then. And apparently, I'm 15 years behind. So thanks for that. Yeah.
And then there was the Urban Grand Challenge, the DARPA Urban Grand Challenge, which was the kind of urban branch of that, which was really interesting. And then from there, that's what spawned Waymo and kind of all the companies that came out of that, including my leadership. And then I believe that was the last one. And then the Cyber Grand Challenge was like the next big grand challenge, and you guys probably remember that from DEF CON a few years ago. But I believe it was just the first two out in the desert, and then the Urban Grand Challenge, each with a $1 million+ pot and sponsors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So you're helping secure our autonomous future, basically, right? Making sure that no one can take over your car when it's being driven by the AI, right? Basically, right? That's Kevin. We're gonna credit that all to you now, Got it?
You're basically protecting us from Skynet, I think is what you're saying. You're the John Connor of AppSec.
All right. I'm going to stand to this one, and I'm out. I'm out of here. No. I did tell my son that I get to ride around with robot cars, right? Like they're robot cars. And the other day he's 5, and he kind of found out that like there's not like Disney World animatronic style droids driving these things. Like they're just computers. And he was totally unimpressed. He was like, wait, there's not actually robots in the cars? I was like, no, buddy. Like it's just a sensor stack and some computers and drive-by-wire. And he was totally bummed.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's hard when you demystify technology for the first time. The John Connor. Oh, I love that you quoted that. It's awesome. I want to see that in your bio, and I want some royalties. So also,
yeah, we'll write a bio for you, Kevin. Okay, don't worry about it. It's all good.
You know, mine's getting a little long in the tooth, so I will be happy to add that.
Sweet.
Although, like Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek and the folks over at Cruise and Waymo, they've been doing this a little longer than me, so they probably deserve those titles before I do.
That's all good.
No. It's you, Kevin.
Yeah, just being an early adopter doesn't mean anything, right? Yeah.
But it has, I mean, so that segue, obviously you guys know I worked with you in consulting, and I worked previously at a consulting firm. I worked in financial before that. Working at a tech company is bananas. It's just wild. Like the engineers, the roboticists, hardware, software, like a quarter of my company has PhDs. And I mean, just like, and the things I see every day, the problems they're solving, just like the weird, quirky office things, it's just wild. Every day it's an adventure. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It's exactly why I wanted to go over to an embedded role outside of finance, because that's what my history was. And it's been a lot of fun.
Good. I hope it's challenging still, and keeping you on your toes. I was a little sad that you're not doing like mobile AppSec anymore, and like, who am I going to turn to now? But I'm pretty sure you'll stay on top of it.
But then he filled this in with all this core knowledge. Course knowledge,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's this.
So, yeah, that's a perfect segue. So believe it or not, the course thing actually happened. I don't think Tim was still working with me. I think Tim had moved on, but it was legitimately a year plus in the making before we gave the presentation at Derby. Tim and I gave a similar presentation. I believe it was in March at B-Sides Greenville. And we kind of just held on to the research, held on to the tooling, because we wanted to give it on a big stage. Nothing against Greenville. Greenville's awesome. Greenville's Tim's home, or backyard, I should say, his home now. And but we really wanted to hold on.
You should have heard the things he was saying before the podcast about Greenville.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, we wanted to hold on. We wanted to present it on a big stage, which we'll go into more about like what we did for a demo and why it was really cool to give it in a bigger place. But so we basically I guess just to say no bad things. The whole crux, the whole idea, the whole course thing came from. So you guys obviously know Evan Johnson very well. You've had him on twice, I believe. And so he did a lot of work in the core security area, as well as I think David from Portswigger. And there's been some people who've looked at cores over time. And the whole idea behind cores, right, is that Our browsers have the same origin policy in it. The same origin policy just keeps domain 1 from doing something bad to domain 2, requesting resources and whatnot. And the idea that we have the same origin policy is really what keeps scripts and things running on pages from just going wild, wild west. Like, it would just be insane if we didn't have the same origin policy. And if you're curious about why the same origin policy is just so important, look back at some of the research that Tavis Ormandy has done into like the sandboxing breakouts and some of the different Chromium embedded issues with. But did I lose you guys? I see you guys laughing.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm laughing because when I put one of the links up over the video, it like Seth's face got cut out, and he's like trying to like, I'm still here. Sorry, I was listening though.
No, you're good. You're good.
It made me laugh.
I saw you laughing.
Being silly.
Like, I thought maybe my mouth was just moving and you guys couldn't see anything.
No, this is what happens when we do podcasts late at night. This is why. This is one of the reasons we went to during the day, because it gets just goofy.
Yeah. So what I would just say was a lot of the really good findings Tavis Ormandy has found were in things like password managers and antivirus and different things where they had Chromium embedded and they just turned off same origin policy or turned off sandboxing altogether, and it just like completely went to shit like immediately, right? So that just kind of tells you the importance of same origin policy. Well, because we have this thing, the same origin policy, we need a way to allow different domains, subdomains to talk to each other, right? And the whole idea behind microservices and web services in general would not work without a way to allow these different domains to talk to each other when we want them to. And so that's why CORS was the RFC for CORS came out, and so now we have this thing called CORS. And the research that Evan did and David and of course other people really was around some of the ways that you can shoot yourself in the foot with CORS, with policies that are too open or unsafe defaults and things like that. And basically what I found, and then I called up Tim, and we'll go into more of that, was kind of a novel attack on something that is or should be safe, but no one was talking about yet. And that was kind of what bootstrapped the whole conversation with Tim, and why I call up Tim, because Tim is good with writing code. He loves writing code. And I told him about the situation, or what I thought I saw, and I wanted him to tell me I was wrong. And he did tell me I was wrong, but he said, let's talk tomorrow after I figure out why you're wrong. And then we talked later. And I think his comment was, I was wrong. And then we talked through it again, and he realized that no, it was indeed an issue. And within another 24 hours, he had a whole proof of concept, like framework of how we were going to exploit it using this custom tool. And that's basically what became the whole course presentation.
That's always been one thing about Tim that interested me, is that he's like, because he is interested in code. He does code a lot. Yeah. It's like definitely something he's into and does, and pretty good at. And it cracks me up because when you talk to him, he's always like, oh, hey, it's not really my passion, or like I'm not that good at it, or it's always he's always like just saying basically that he's not good at it. He doesn't like to do it. He doesn't do it that much. I'm like, hey man, we all know the real deal. So Tim, if you're listening, we all know you're a coder. Stop pretending you're not.
It's too late. The cat's out of the bag. No, totally. I've been recommending people just go listen to your talk. Like the research is super cool, but even just the explanation of what CORS actually is, I don't think enough people really understand the whole idea that it's not a security control, it's an anti-security control. You're actually turning off security when you implement CORS. And like the explanation that you and Tim have in that talk is one of the best that I've seen from just public figures, as far as like expressing what it is and how it actually works. And then it goes into why your attack actually works and the exploit and everything else that's associated with it. But there's not enough. I don't know. I mean, there's just not enough explanations out there because, if you look at most, like I think about all the reports that I see from as a security consultant and things like that, and they're like, oh, your CORS is misconfigured, but nobody really goes into what CORS actually does or why it's misconfigured. They just say, yeah, it's misconfigured. Go figure that out, right? Yeah. And it's not super helpful as opposed to, I dig it, basically, is what I'm saying. We're fans. So
I totally agree, and credit where credit's due. Tim was the one who kind of came up with the idea of, at least in our talk, of approaching it as an anti-security control, like just throwing that out there. Like, same origin policy is a security control. Yeah. CORS is the shim that allows us to bypass same origin policy when we need to. But the problem is exactly what you just said, Seth, that no one really knows what even same origin policy is. Like, that doesn't even, like, if you don't see the little error in dev tools, or you don't have some type of concept of the same origin policy, like, that whole thing is opaque. But then when you add on CORS on top of that, it just completely goes off the rails really, really quickly. And I, again, credit where credit's due, Tim was the one who was like, hey man, you definitely found an edge case. You definitely found something that's cool, and the tool is going to be neat for a demo. But we would really be doing a disservice if we didn't really go into CORS. And he does it in his class as well. And we took the opportunity to kind of like customize it for DerbyCon, and I used Hacker Tracker actually as a example of, like, Hacker Tracker wants to talk to DerbyCon's app, and they want to post check-in because Hacker Tracker is your mobile app, and DerbyCon is where the tickets are, and kind of use that cross communication as an example. And it's exactly what you said. So just taking that opportunity to talk about CORS, what pre-flight is, what the mechanisms are, what all of the different headers. There's a ton of headers. And they're really important, and they're only exposed in certain scenarios. And you can get really lost in the weeds. And the other really important thing to remember about CORS is it's enforced at the browser. Mm-hmm. Same origin policy is enforced at the browser. So we do a lot of our testing via command line or, of course, burp. It doesn't, same origin policy in CORS, it's nothing for burp. Like, you can do whatever you want. And so there's been times where Tim and I have been deep in conversation, like, why? This isn't even making sense. Like, where did we get here? What are we doing with our lives? And then we realized, like, oh, you can't do it this way. Like, that's not how. So not only is it a weird kind of concept to grasp, and the whole shim thing, it's also like, oh, and we can't use our normal tools how we normally use it to check these use cases. Like, it's just a little bit foreign to how we normally do things.
Yeah, like, and to be fair, right? Like, that's part of what, like, wrapping my own brain around it, right? And how CORS actually works. That's why, like, when you guys were talking about it, I was like, yes, like, I didn't have the same words to express it as what you and Tim did, and that's why I keep pointing people in your direction, or that YouTube, like, the video's direction, is I'm like, look, if you want to understand why CORS is different than every other security control that we have out there, you have to understand what it is and how it's actually operating, and most people don't. Like, you guys even pop up the what's her bucket that is always like, the CORS issues, right?
Yeah, Kathy do. Yeah.
There you go. Yep. Because I mean, but she's exactly right. From a developer perspective, it's always like, crap, CORS is getting in my way again, because they're trying to make calls out to other places, and I got to turn off the security controls. It's almost like I'm turning off my firewall so I can do what I want, right? Which, like, they don't necessarily realize the impact of that in a lot of cases. Which is why, like, again, the tool and everything else that you talk about in the presentation is so, it's cool, right? Like, so okay, so yeah, CORS is turning off the same origin policy, right? We've got that. It's done in the browser. The browser, basically listens to what the site tells it as far as, hey, these are the sites that can talk to me, and then if it bypasses the same origin policy, it allows it to load. all right, so what is it that you guys did with that? What was the research? What was the impetus that caused you to call up Tim in the middle of the night and wake him up, in the middle of the night? Like, I mean, it's Tim, so what? That was like 10:30, right?
So it's opposite. So I'm the early one, and
Oh,
Tim's
okay,
the one
there you
playing Rocket League until 1.
Oh, that's
and
right.
then
That's right.
writing code till 3, and then
And I just for a second, I want to take a point out to note that Tim is one of the few people who actually has the genetic marker where he doesn't like have to. I think that's what Tim can correct me. He's on chat, but from what I understand, like there's a very tiny percentage of the population that has like this genetic makeup where they just don't sleep. They just don't sleep much at all. It's only like a few hours, and that's like a whole night's sleep to them. And he's just like the one of the rare people I know that can operate off that. Like, I don't know, man. I love sleep. I wouldn't want to sleep only a few hours. It's like my favorite thing.
I remember
you guys stand on sleep.
I remember, quick aside, when I first started at the consulting agency where we all worked together, I was on site with Tim. Like, second day on the job, I'm on site with Tim. And I had just left another consulting agency where we traveled a good bit. Like, I was gone at least 1 week out of the month, if not 2 weeks out of the month, pretty regularly. And I'm all stoked. The folks we worked with were amazing. We had an amazing team when we all worked together. And so I'm on site with Tim and a bunch of other guys, and they were up to like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'm like, guys, I'm exhausted. Like, I got to get some sleep. So I called a night. The next night, they're up to 2 or 3 in the morning again, playing board games. And
I can't hang like that. I can't do that.
They did it for like a week straight. Then I realized where we came from. We didn't do a whole lot of travel. So I'm thinking these guys are doing this week over week, twice a month, up, like not sleeping at all. I realized, like, oh wait, this is the first time most of these guys have even been in the same room for 6 months or a year. And some of these, folks had never even been, so it wasn't what I thought it was, but I'm thinking like, I can't hang with these guys. They're up till, every night till 2 or 3 in the morning, and I don't know where they sleep. And it was just coming off of.
Yeah. It's not a regular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although Tim's body could hold up to that. I mean, he's a freak that way. Yeah. But a good freak. Sorry, Tim. I mean that in a good way. You're lucky.
So yeah. So that's to get back to your question. So like I mentioned, Evan, David, other folks, they've looked at core specifically from a security perspective of like unsafe defaults, which is extremely important in cores. Every place I go to, the first thing that I see are people using libraries that default to reflected origin. And that was one of the things specifically Evan looked at. He at the time that he was interested in it, which he's interested in a lot of things, and I think this is fallen down on his priority list for good reason. But at the time that he was interested in it, I think he scanned the Alexa top. I believe it's like 700,000. I don't know why maybe he was just trying to get to a certain number that were true positives, and then he stopped. But for whatever reason, it wasn't quite a million. I think it was like 700K or something like that. And he has it out on his gist. But at that time, there was a good number, like I want to say 500, not a huge ratio, but a good number of sites that were just reflecting origin. Whatever origin you put in that you were coming from, the site took that origin, reflected it back in the response. And what that basically does is essentially turns off the same origin policy, because it's reflecting whatever you're telling it. It's saying, yes, you have the permission to talk to me. And where that becomes really of concern is when you couple arbitrary reflected origin with access control allow credentials.
Yep.
When you're using cookie-based credentials, because basically what that does is that's just CSRF on steroids. And it basically says any site can talk to me, and I will pull my cookies out of my cookie jar and send those happily along. And it just becomes extremely, extremely dangerous. And it's so bad that the browsers have actually neutered the ability to use the wildcard origin with access control allow credentials, because that's just like so dangerous. But what has happened now is that because of that, the reflected origin has kind of really picked up. And that. So anyway, that's the stuff that David and Evan and other folks who created Python scanners and all kinds of different tools to identify either like regex captures that are too permissive or just reflecting raw origins or whatever the case may be. That's where really the research starts and stops. It's all around origin. It's all around access control allow credentials. So one day I was on an assessment consulting, and I got the burp alert, like reflected origin, but it wasn't the, I'm sorry, it was the wildcard origin. Burp will give you an info, or at least it used to, an info issue for wildcard origin. And I'm looking at that like, man, this wildcard looks dangerous, but it's not dangerous. And there's got to be something. There's got to be something. And then I just had one of those light bulb moments where I'm just looking at the whiteboard, and it hit me that the whole idea of the browsers neutering that wildcard origin thing is with credentials, but not all requests that are dangerous include credentials. So the idea behind me calling Tim was, can we create this concept of using unauthenticated requests with permissive origin policies to do brute forcing? And I think actually, you guys might remember this, I think I called you guys too. And or at least I think I had this conversation with multiple people, maybe. But anyway.
I'm sure you did. I do feel like that does sound kind of familiar.
Yeah. Or it might have been like we were prepping for, because this is, thankfully, this is the fourth time you've had me on the podcast. So it may have even been prepping for one of the podcasts previously. And I just mentioned it in passing. But anyway, I
think you did actually. Yeah. I think because you were saying like Tim and I are working on this for this talk. Yeah. That talk took a while to get out there because you had the material prep for a while, but it took you a while. Just because, you're going to like DerbyCon. And so that took time just for like, you had to submit earlier to that, so it took a while for that, obviously the conference to come on and for you to give the talk.
So the brass tacks, the idea was to create a framework that we could use to target permissive wildcard origins for brute force login attacks, or basically anything that you expose that it could be like a coupon code, it could be a login, it could be anything that has an endpoint that doesn't have rate limit, doesn't have CSRF controls or whatever. Authentication is an interesting one because a lot of times authentication doesn't have CSRF control on it because your credentials are the secret. So you're not going to CSRF someone to log in, because that just doesn't happen, right? So the whole idea behind adding a nonce or a CSRF token on a login is just like overhead, additional complexity that, especially on a login, you don't want to add. So that's kind of where we landed. Use permissive origin for cores to target a login. But the interesting thing about cores is, because of the way it's supposed to work, you have script that's communicating cross origin. It can receive that data back. We could basically funnel that data back to use it in like a command and control type setting. So basically the way that this worked, and this is what made the talk so interesting and why we didn't just say, screw it, throw a blog up and let's move on. We wanted to give it as a talk because we created, Tim created this really cool command and control type thing using server sent requests and all kinds of interesting concepts. So basically what we did was we took an attackee, so a victim, and aimed their login, their brute force, to another victim. So you have victim A, and then you have victim B, who is the service or server. And we're basically funneling bad login requests or online brute force or credential stuffing attacks through victim A to victim B, which is the server or service that's vulnerable. And basically we're doing that via cores, but we're basically hooking the browser, whether it would be cross-site scripting, or whether it be a rogue ad, or whether it just be like a watering hole attack, whatever the case may be, you're just basically using a script on a page to send requests from one victim to another victim. And the reason that is interesting is because in an online brute force attack, what's the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, we have a whole crap ton of requests coming from this IP, block it. Okay, well, we have a bunch from here, block it. Oh, it must be a botnet, block. Well, when you have it distributed from users who are probably legitimate users, it becomes much harder to play whack-a-mole with. And so, yeah, that's what we ended up doing. We ended up basically creating a demo where we use the audience's computers or phones to go to a site. Tim had a script that was embedded in that site. That script basically pulled down credential pairs and then sent those credential pairs to another site. That was, again, all of this was a closed loop demo. And that site then process real logins. It was Juice Shop. Actually, the attack, the service that we were attacking was Juice Shop. So we were basically pointing one victim to online brute force Juice Shop. And then we could basically funnel those requests back through the victim and see the results as the attacker. And that's what made the attack really interesting. So
I mean, that's you, because you're like, well, if you don't have rate limiting, but that would, I mean, like that, this is the exact reason you do this, is if they do have rate limiting, like this is a good, because if you don't know about rate limiting, like you guys add to this as you want, but like rate limiting is based on basically signatures. And it's easy if you see it coming from a certain IP space or there's certain signatures you can build from the headers being sent. But if you can change these things up and make them dynamic and distribute all this work and make the request a little bit different, I mean, it's really hard for somebody to, like an anti-abuse or spammy abuse type situation, to like figure out who to block.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like even the amount of time that it took you to actually do that, like I can't remember how many requests it was that you guys sent, but it was some insane number. And like, I even remember you and Tim talking about how you had to slow it down because it would go so quick that you would get the password back before like you could even talk about what was going on. Like if you had a couple hundred people that were executing that attack, and like, yeah, I mean, you forget how powerful that whole kind of idea of a botnet really is until you're able to execute something like this.
That's why I love research like this, because it's these findings that when you go to give a report, whether it's, it doesn't matter if you're internal or external, but if you give a report, there's inevitably going to be things that fall under sort of like the lower risk category. And previously, let's be honest, most of this is true of many web app security things on their own, oftentimes fall under a low risk category. But you say, hey, I know it doesn't seem important, but you should harden it for just future proofing purposes, right? That's really what we're trying to do here. Is there might be maybe something else. And then you've got somebody that comes out like yourself and Tim, and you're like, hey, that thing that was low, somebody's proved that, it's not low. It's a real concern. So it's pretty cool to I always love when people do this type of research and then, make things a little bit more serious than we initially thought.
Yeah.
The craziest thing to me, and Seth, you just mentioned this, when Tim first worked up a POC, like I did a POC, but it was literally just like one payload through another browser incognito mode to another. And I was like, I can't get all of this like wired up. And I told Tim, and he like literally called Tim 24 hours later, we synced back up, and he was thinking about it from one direction. I tweaked it slightly and we realigned. 24 hours after that, he had a whole POC worked up. And that first POC that he had, which is actually pretty damn close to what I think his final product was, he basically fed in 10 credential pairs. And like you said, Seth, it was so fast that he could never actually see it. He would set it up, he would go back to the browser, it would be done.
It'd already be done.
Yeah. And it was, and so then he ended up throttling it to like 1 per second. And then we 1 per second per browser, per hook. and you could obviously open up multiple tabs, and that's what we ended up doing. And then when we went to Greenville and did this for the first time, it was still 1 per second, but we had a pretty short payload list, and we just didn't know how honestly, we did this kind of silly, but each of our hook, our C2, and our victim app were all on different cloud providers using different technologies. It was like the demo God's worst nightmare. And we got to Greenville, and it worked. I mean, like amazingly worked. I don't even know if Tim ever logged out of his console. We closed it. We walked away from it. We put in the CSP for Derby and one other one that we weren't accepted at. We got accepted. Tim taught a brand new class at Derby this year, which I helped him out a little bit on. But he was really busy this summer writing that class and working through that. So we didn't even really go into much until the week of our talk, because we had already had it written. We had slides, we had everything, but we did do some tweaking. But anyway, he opened it up, and his last commit was literally like, first commit was 2 days after I first brought this up to him last summer. And then the last commit that he saw was like a day before we did the prezo in Greenville. Opened it back up, fired everything back up, and it just worked again. It was just like amazing how well this actually worked every time we did it. And anyway, long story short, we put maybe 10,000 credential pairs in at DerbyCon, and then we slowed it from 1 second down to, I think, 0.1 seconds, or maybe a quarter of a second. And it's still, because we just had so many more people at Derby participating in the demo, you can hear in the talk, the audio is a little weird. It's not quite synced up for the DerbyCon video. But if you kind of match up, you can hear me saying, oh, there's 400. Oh, there's 400. Those were 400 requests coming in. Like every 2 seconds, there were 400 brute force attempts against the application. And that was just maybe 20 people or 30 people in the room participating. If you think about that and then extrapolate that to like a Mirai botnet or something like that, I mean, it would be absolute chaos.
I mean, I go back to like, you guys like targeted the login functionality and the credential stuffing, and I mean, obviously that's a dangerous thing, like the brute force attacks that go along with that. I go back to some of that research that John Poland did, and his little like, I can't remember what he called it, right? Like his, so he was trying to crack like numeric PIN codes and things like that, right? Like using a similar kind of botnet style approach. Mm-hmm. But you think about popping something like that in there, like, okay, you've only got 10 minutes and it's 6 characters long. Guess what, right? Like if you've got access to, it doesn't even sound like, a few hundred browsers that are pointed at a system, and then you don't have cores enabled, bam, right? Or I should say you do have cores enabled, but insecurely configured. It really sounds like we could get past that pretty quickly. So like no longer is like 6 digits or 7 digits even something that we would have to be worried about, right? From an attacker perspective, but from like trying to protect against it, like without implementing cores properly or implementing, some sort of rate limiting on there, it feels pretty monumental as far as, oh crap, right? We're not thinking about this correctly. We're really not taking into account the number of systems that could be pointed at something, and the different approaches that someone could take for that.
Yeah, I did like, I think a check on the Fortune 500 like main login pages for like, looked at whatever the Fortune 500 were that were tech apps, and then looked at their main product login for each of the ones that had some type of tech app. And I don't know if I ran into any, to be honest with you. Maybe the Fortune 100, but whatever it was, I looked at it like, okay, this is their main app. They're a tech company. This is their login screen. None of them were using cores in a way, and this was a year and a half ago, but none of them were using cores by itself without also using CSRF protection or a notch or something. So it's not quite as bad as it sounds.
Shop.
But it just takes. I mean, there are a lot, particularly if I want to be careful because I don't want to like give someone a loaded gun and give them the target. But if you do a specific Shodan search on a specific routing framework, and I'll leave it at that, you look at those, and almost every one that I found was vulnerable. And then what I did was basically look at Shodan, look for that header, then just kept clicking through, and I was like, oh, that's a brand I recognize. Oh, that's a brand I recognize. It was kind of like that. So it wasn't quite like 10% of the internet is pwned, but it was like there are recognizable brands out there that have this issue right now. But
yeah, I mean, I think like in general, like the long tail of security, right, is, yeah, you've got the big banks, you've got the big tech companies, and even startups that have people like us working there that are aware of this sort of thing. But then you've got kind of the middle layer, which is, at least somebody's coming in once in a while to look at security things, and they're probably going to pull some of this, and they're going to get it configured right. But then you have all the WordPress sites and the small businesses that just, like that's there is a huge amount of, like, I don't even know how to phrase it, but like sites and applications that are out there that just don't get security scrutiny, right? There's no bug bounty out there for them. Like, they're just too small for that. It's not even on their radar, or if it is, it's just too expensive for them, all that kind of stuff. And so that's where I have a bigger fear for it, is like, a little mom and pop, community bank that just never really worries about that on their login page or on their sign up page that happens to have a PIN number or like an SMS text that they send to someone that, I mean, I don't want to point, like, again, like I don't want to point people that direction, but realistically, that's where it would really affect someone's day-to-day life, right?
And just to follow up on that, so one thing that Tim made clear was this was purpose built. This was a demo. The idea of this was to show, but then like he literally has to touch. I don't want to put words in Tim's mouth. I'll let Tim say what he has or hasn't done. But at least at the time that we delivered this talk and he released the code, he had mentioned that, like, I'm never going to touch this code again. Like, there's no real good reason for this tool other than to demonstrate what we did. He wanted to open source it. He's not trying to hide anything. He open sourced it. It's out there. But it's not going to be like Recon NG that he's maintaining and adding features and adding more hooks. And it's like, okay, this is a very specific demo. We want to show that this is a real risk. It can be abused in XYZ scenario. But at the end of the day, like, other than demonstration purposes, there's not actually a good reason to use this setup. It's just what it is. It is what it is. But what I did want to talk about regarding Evan's research that he did, I think it was in 2013 or 2015, is, in my opinion, this problem has only gotten worse because of AWS, Azure, microservices, S3, Lambdas. You have all of these different subdomains and microservices that are talking to each other on all, and you, to be able to do that via, XHR, you have to enable core. You have to do that, right? So because of that, you go out and you pull down XYZ library. And that's really where Evan's work shined. He went through and did a lot of research to, like, this library. You just pull in this library, it reflects the origin right there. Fix that. And he went through and he did PRs. He did a lot of work to try to make those libraries better. And honestly, he got some flack for it. He got a lot of pushback, and that's just open source in a nutshell. But beyond that, a lot of libraries today that aren't just terribly vulnerable out of the gate default to wildcard. Almost all of them do, and that's actually where we brought up the Swagger document stuff in the talk. I feel a little bit bad. Several people have come to me like, you guys know you shit on Swagger and you didn't even apologize, and I'm like, we didn't. It wasn't that we were trying to call them out, but it's really important to know that Swagger is used heavily. You guys know that. Swagger is used so many places. It's hugely implemented, widely implemented. I should say, excuse me, I sound like Trump. It's widely implemented, and usually it's not on the same host. It's on a different port. It's on, it's many times on a different port or different subdomain or something than the actual application. And when you do that, you have to enable CORS. Like it says right on there, like for Swagger to work, if it's not on the same port and it's not on the same host, you need to enable CORS. And their recommendation is the site that all of them either default to reflected origin or wildcard, every single one of them. So it's like you're using a tool for documenting your APIs, and it's supposed to make you more feature complete, more documentation complete, hopefully more secure. And just by using that tool, you've now opened up CORS where your application may not even need CORS. And I actually have found that in assessments multiple times where I'm looking at an app, you guys aren't even talking to other domains. Like why is CORS even a thing? And then it hits me, it's Swagger. They have Swagger on this app and they needed it to talk over a different port. They had to enable CORS.
And that takes me back to the mobile stuff too, because I can't tell you the number of mobile assessments that I've done where I found Swagger installed on the API, like embedded in the API, and they've completely disabled same origin policy via CORS because, we've got Swagger there and that's how we developed it. And then they just leave it sitting there when they push to production because they think, no one's ever going to find it or whatever, right? I like Swagger is one of those things that I love to search for when I find an API endpoint, because I'm like, I know that as a developer, it's super useful to be able to test your API endpoints. But then at that point, that's a good indication of it is the reflected origin or the wildcard origin policy. So.
Yep. So I should state, other than the fact that we've identified that applications are just using CORS just to integrate with Swagger, like that is kind of weird, right? You're opening yourself up to a whole class of issues that you may not even know because you want to use this documentation tool. So that's kind of an issue. The other thing that we brought up about Swagger, and Tim actually brought this up, is in their documentation, they actually call CORS a security policy. Like CORS is a security policy, and you hit it at the top of the show, Seth. Like CORS isn't the security policy. CORS is the shim to bypass the security policy. So not only are people implementing CORS just to use this tool, even the tool that is making you implement it doesn't really define what the thing is very well. So it's just like everywhere you go into this stack, it's very fuzzy. So I want to make it clear that I have nothing against Swagger. Like you said, Seth, I actually really like when I find a site or app or whatever I'm testing that has Swagger, because like you did half my job for me. This is awesome.
Sweet. Thank you.
And I think it's super important. I mean, like we all dealt with WSDLs and all, YAML and all the other, crap that
well, not everybody. I mean, that's for some people listening, but remember, there's definitely people on this podcast that they have, and good for you also. If you don't have to deal with WSDLs, WSDL, good for you.
Bless your heart. Right?
So,
is that what you're saying?
Bless your heart. Sweet summer children. I just wanted to point out that I think it's important to just remember that, not everybody understands like that there were, crazy difficult protocols and technologies to work with. And in the government definitely still are, unfortunately.
Wasn't it this spring that you guys were like oh, we never see XML. You had someone on, I forget who it was. And you're like, we never see XML anymore. Oh, XML is really, and I'm like mowing the lawn, listening to the podcast. I'm like, what are these guys tested? I see it every week. What, the whole AppSec
So if you work with
thing.
hipster companies, if your primary thing in life is
see
working with like,
then all you see is GraphQL, right?
yeah,
GraphQL and RESTful endpoints, and I regret that comment now. Like after saying that, I think I found one like every week for the next like 3 or 4 weeks, or the 3 or 4 assessments after. I was like, oh look, there's another SOAP endpoint. Great, right? Question mark WSDL. Thank you. Yeah. So
I was just working with the API today. Actually, Jamf.
Oh yeah.
Jamf. If you don't set the content type to application JSON, it defaults to XML.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that controls the response back being JSON is the content type and expected content. So if you leave that blank, it will, and ironically, I'm pretty sure it has a very, very Swagger-like set of documentation. This is great. It's awesome because I was actually working from a developer side for Jamf. But anyway, I just saw XML today on a product that's deployed on a lot of tech companies because tech companies use Mac and Mac is kind of the de facto for or Jamf is the de facto for Mac management. So
yeah. Well, I mean along those lines too. Like we're talking Swagger, we're talking XML and SOAP, but like actually Justin and I are giving a couple-hour workshop on dealing with testing basically web service interfaces, and those are the ones that we're talking about are SOAP and REST, and we'll go into GraphQL a little bit as well, but that'll be at SyncCon actually, and I think end of next week we're going to go through and do a small workshop on that, because it is. Yeah, when you're dealing with mobile apps or anything that's RESTful or anything that's using XHR, it's gonna talk one of those technologies, one of those protocols, right?
So how long before we're all sitting around on this podcast talking about how we never see traditional REST web services and everything's
I'm never making that proclamation again. I'm sorry, right? Like I didn't knock on wood or whatever it was before.
I firmly maintain the world's going the direction of what Idiocracy predicted, so I don't think things will get better. But no, I'm kidding. Kind of.
Well, I'm just thinking like there will be a time where we're going to be like, man, remember how REST services were everywhere? Now it's all HTTP2 and gRPC and just like will we be upset, or will we wish we were back in the days where things were just so easy with HTTP 1.1 and non-stateful and easy to replay? I mean, from a security perspective, it's easy to get in there and do that stuff and find, but when you have a truly stateful protocol like HTTP2, HTTP3, and you're using gRPC and some of these interesting protocols, it's like we might actually be excited when we see some of the older technology where it's easier to actually just invoke things and see asynchronous requests or synchronous requests and actually, I don't know. We'll see. It's not going to go away. I know you guys aren't making the XML prediction here, but it might be interesting to see in a couple of years how.
There are some things that we need to look out for with HTTP3. I know I have not looked through the standard at all, and I know that's coming soon. And I definitely need to brush up on that. It's something that's really interesting that's coming down. So I think I'm saying coming down because I think I think Chrome's the first one who's going to be supporting that, I want to say. But yeah, if that's the case, everybody else is going to follow. So
I think HTTP3 is supported by Chrome, Firefox, and Cloudflare right now.
Oh, nice. Very cool. It makes sense. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, HTTP3, this is going to be gross over exaggeration, but HTTP3 is essentially HTTP2 over UDP, right?
Right, exactly. Like they took away the TCP handshake bit. I was trying to understand the spec, and then I was like, I'm too dumb for this right now. Yeah, but that's how it's summarized essentially. Like, or that's a good summary of it, I think. Yeah.
I don't know.
Supposedly they solved the reliability issues with using UDP. I don't really know how they did it though. So that would be something interesting.
So we're taking more state away from HTTP. That's basically what you're saying.
Well, no, it's more like, it's more about just like efficiency and speed, but like trying to somewhat maintain reliability, which obviously with UDP. So for those listening to the podcast that aren't familiar, TCP, if you're starting your career, there's a handshake that occurs. It's like this whole SYN-ACK relationship that this handshake sequence, and then with UDP, and that's to make sure that like, hey, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Okay, you're there. I'm going to send you something. Okay, cool. That's TCP in a nutshell. And UDP is just like, fuck it, here you go. Whatever happens, drops it. I don't know. Like that's the reliability, as you can see, like without retransmission, there it's like, it's fast because there's not that like handshake, but it's not reliable. But I guess it's going to fix that. We'll see.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah. I'm sorry, good.
No, I just posted a link to the QUIC, the quick UDP internet connection or whatever it is, right? Because that's what it's actually using, right? Underneath that. Yeah. Go ahead.
So Google came out with Quick, which was the protocol, and then Quick basically through the RFC process and through the Google's push turned into HTTP2. And then HTTP2 has now evolved into HTTP3, which might, and again, probably gross oversimplification, but the idea is similar to the way that like UDP VPNs work, right?
Yep.
To where that type is completed, and then the TLS negotiation and the application layer are within that pipe. So same idea, like you can set up a stateful UDP, VPN over UDP, and your packets still get there. It still works. Like it's the same idea, it's just at a different layer.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read up on Quick and stuff because I think you're right. Like it's going to affect a lot of the tools and other things that we use, right? Like burp support, and I mean we've already seen this a little bit with even just WebSockets and some of the other technologies that are coming out that the security tooling doesn't support it, and it makes our life more difficult, right? From a testing perspective, but. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be other things that are going to pop up in there. Like it's interesting how it's stuffing everything together with like the TLS handshake as well to speed things up. But I mean, they're saying that half of all Chrome communication now is already using Quick. So even though it's still in draft mode or whatever you want to call it from IETF. The browser's already using it and Google's already using it because it's quicker and it probably reduces the overhead on their systems. So
I know
it's here. Yeah.
If you used to be able to go to Chrome /net-internals, and in net internals there was an HTTP2 proxy basically, or I guess you would call it like a syslog. And my phone just thought I said the digital assistant for some reason. But anyway, the used to be able to go into net internals and you could see. So it's like HTTP2 uses the idea of frames like Ethernet rather than like the asynchronous two-part requests that HTTP1 and 1.1 use. So you used to be able to go in and like look at the frames and see all that. Chrome removed that. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just like a bloat thing. I don't know if it was a security thing. If you go to Chrome net internals now, it's a separate applet. You have to download that applet, but you can still utilize it to see the HTTP2 traffic. You just have to like enable a logging mode and then export that log into this applet and then parse that applet. So it's not quite as easy as it used to be, but at least just doing that, capturing that log and then browsing sites and then going out and importing it, I think you'd be amazed at seeing how many sites other than Google properties are using it. I know Twitter specifically is a heavy user of HTTP2. There's a lot of sites out there that I was surprised a couple of years ago. And I think that number has only gone up. But you're 100% right, Seth. Right now, the only way we're able to use burp is by saying, I don't know what HTTP2 is. Can we go back to HTTP1? And the sites that we're negotiating with are kind enough to say, okay, yeah, we can support that.
Yeah. But you know, I blame IE for all of the supporting old technologies, because all the big financials or the big companies are still using Windows, and I guess they're moving to Edge slowly.
Don't talk about Microsoft. They're listening.
Well, that's right, because GitHub's switching from GraphQL to SOAP, right? Back to XML, because
it's our big push. Yeah.
Big push. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it at Universe in like a month. I really honestly hope somebody from the tech journalism field picks up on that and actually prints a story saying that, we're running SOAP for Universe. That'd be amazing.
I could put something together, just.
That'd be a great April Fool's. Like, just put together a whole document and a whole blog post and like have a few endpoints that are actually available via SOAP and just be like, yeah, we're moving.
If we're moving to SOAP, yeah.
That'd be a great one.
SOAP with authorization headers. Sweet.
So
maybe I can get Neil he pushes to prod. Neil do it for you. Oreo Shake on Twitter.
Yeah.
Neil might do it for me.
So to come full circle with that, who makes Swagger, right? Smart Bear.
I actually don't remember. Who is it?
It's the people who make SOAP UI.
Oh, it is.
And anyone, I hope there's people on this call other than the three of us.
That's hilarious.
Who remember having to strangle SOAP UI to try to get it to work with TLS. Man. It was a bear, no pun intended. It was terrible. So I hope
I just pulled up their site. I'm like, oh look, Swagger Hub and SOAP UI. Dang, I did not realize that.
Isn't that funny?
So SOAP UI normalized pulling data from WSDLs and normalized the calls, and then you could edit the calls, right? Like you could actually do like a burp, almost like a burp suite type deal with it. Yeah. I couldn't. I was like, yeah, I've worked with SOAP UI, but I just don't remember. It was so long ago. Like I think that's been a long time since I've worked with SOAP UI.
The pro version even had like security payloads that you could set.
And it was expensive, wasn't it? Like really expensive.
Yeah, but it was one of the only like API testers that was out there, right?
It was expensive. Yeah. It was clunky. Like the user interface was clunky, but the worst part was, and I don't know if you had the same experience, but I know a lot of people who have, was getting it to properly negotiate TLS with its Java core. Like there was just something weird about it.
Say no more. You said Java core.
What's that? Oh yeah.
The Java core, say no more. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Burp and Zap and other, Java apps seem to be able to do TLS negotiation pretty well. I don't know what it was about
memory.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I could think of is like you'd have to use it being SOAP UI. Like it was already like, oh, okay, I gotta use this thing, and then on top of it. Like,
I totally remember chaining SOAP UI through burp.
Yeah.
So burp can handle TLS.
And Tim said that too. Yeah.
Oh, he did.
That's what Tim said. Yeah, exactly.
You're like, here's his comment. Yeah. Tiptoe. I love his picture, by the way, Tim. That's amazing. And proxy to burp. I'm adding to that facial expression. All right. Oh, sorry, Seth. I keep cutting you off. I have to do this.
Nope, you're fine.
That. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I mean, Kevin, we've been going for like an hour and 20 minutes. It doesn't even feel like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like the course talk. I can't wait to see what you guys come out with next, or what research you like paths you guys end up down. Especially doing the autonomous vehicle stuff, right? Whatever you can release from Argo, I'm sure. Feel free to come back on and talk about it. I mean, we're gonna have to have Tim on again too. Seeing as he's been like the fourth member of the podcast tonight, we probably should have brought him on. But
yeah, I definitely
Tim,
I didn't mean to speak for you, and I hope I spoke well when I did speak for him. But yeah, definitely the light bulb moment would have been like literally a couple scripts and some incognito browser tabs talking to each other if it wasn't for Tim. Tim put the pieces together and made that really, really cool framework. And then on top of that, it was really Tim who put the talk framework together. Like, hey, let's start with talking about same origin policy. Let's move to cores and cores, issues. Let's move to this kind of unique thing. Then let's go to the tool, and then let's wrap it back up. So if it was me, it would have been like a lightning talk on this one abuse case and how, So again, all props to that. But it's definitely I agree with you, Seth. It's something that more people should know. It's something that is used or bypassed or copied from Stack Overflow every day. Because of those little same origin policy errors that we see in our consoles. So hopefully and I think probably a lot of people on the podcast have heard of it or know of it a little bit. Hopefully, more people are aware of it. And I am glad that, although the audio is a little bit out of sync, I am glad that the talk at Derby was recorded, because I completely agree. I think it was well received because it was a pretty good inclusive discussion of what cores is and what it isn't. So.
Yeah. No, and it's good. I mean, like, if anyone has questions on it, feel free to join our Slack. Hit up Kevin on Twitter. I'm sure, you have nothing else to do besides teach people how to pick locks. So, you can walk people through the same origin policy and course. But no, but in all seriousness, if you want to talk about it, get involved, let us know, right? Like if you've got questions on it, because it is super interesting, go watch the talk. I highly recommend it. Kudos to you guys for putting that out there and actually putting the research together, because it is top notch, and yeah, come back sometime, right? Like I'm sure we'll.
This is number 4. So we got what's that? A turkey in bowling, right? We're on or no, 3's turkey. I don't know, 4.
It's
They actually made me learn that in middle school. Like we had a test on it, and I still don't remember how that all works.
Wait, you had a test on bowling terminology?
I shit you not. In middle school, and we moved to just outside Seattle, Snohomish County. We lived there for like 9 months, 8 months, something like that. And they legitimately made us learn the rules of bowling and all the terms and all that stuff, and then took a test on it. And it wasn't like testing on like, bowling. It was I think it was like physical education. It was ridiculous. Dumbest thing.
Because I was going to say that had to be Midwest somewhere, but Seattle, I don't. Okay.
Apparently, bowling's a big thing. I don't know. No clue.
Because that said, I guarantee you, no one under the age of 20, outside of like people who happen to play in school or something like that, could sit down and actually write out like the scoring for bowling, because there's always been computers in bowling alleys since they were alive. Like they never had. So I don't know. That's a very niche subject that they taught you.
Yeah, it's just generic physical education. I don't know. I have no idea. It's a rainy place. Maybe indoor stuff. I don't know. I have no clue. To this day, though, I still remember how useless that public education was.
It's a very unique scoring setup, though. Like it is. There's nothing else like it. So it's a cool parlor. What's that?
It's elaborate, and the terms are elaborate. It's weird.
That's going to be your new like coding like job interview, question is build me an algorithm that actually scores bowling right on the board. Go now.
And if they listen to this podcast, they'll know that, be prepared, and have earned that job.
Yeah.
I mean, it is it does have some unique programming challenges to it. Like, if a bunch of if statements. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool one. That's it's probably illegal to ask in the state of California, but sorry, I'm a little salty because I had to go through like interview training because we have people in California of like what I can and can't ask, and I feel like I'm a very, very open, very bias aware, very like, but then like even some of the things that I thought I was cool, I was kosher with, they're like, you can't ask that question, no, because that could be extrapolated that you're asking about their longevity in the field, and that could be that you're asking about their age, and that could be, it's like, oh no, I don't. Wow. What am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, that gets weird, huh?
I appreciate it because by being aware of biases and being over aware of bias, like that's all very important. So I don't want to belittle that, but it is interesting when you weren't. I never worked for a company that had such a high presence in California, and it definitely they're progressive in their legislature about some of those things. So it's interesting. I mean, it's across the board. There's a lot of things that it's opening my eyes to. So
maybe that's why we stick to when we do our interviews, we're like super stick to a rubric, technical, nothing else. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Didn't realize. Dang, we've been going for a while. This is awesome. Like, you're good.
I'm in a hotel.
Yes,
I'm in a hotel.
You're an awesome guest.
I've companionship in the Hampton Inn, so I'll keep you guys on for hours.
Well, you and me. I mean, Ken, he can go to bed or whatever. I guess.
Yeah. And
this is the first time I've been home in a while, so yeah. Well, glamorous. I always laugh because people always think it's so fucking glamorous to travel. They're like, oh, where are you gonna go next? And it's like, man, if you all knew, it's not. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's like you're thankful to have these opportunities, and at the same time, sometimes there's nothing. A lot of times, there's nothing glamorous about it. It's just a grind. So
these past 2 years for you guys, I know some of the time you've been able to bring your families, and that's I'm sure a blessing in itself, and being able to see the world, like that's awesome. But you've done a lot of different traveling. I above and beyond set for you for work. You're also traveling, sometimes. So I don't know, man. I hats off to you guys. I obviously your course has been very well received, and all the different OWASP events and the different conferences you guys have done. Like kudos for you for doing that for the community. But I don't blame you at all for taking a little bit of break because you've been been hitting hard.
Yeah, we're gonna do Australia, and then that's a wrap for a while. I told Seth, I'm like, I need a break. Like, this is it's great. I'm having fun, but I still need a break just for the the old just have a routine for a little while.
He said that, and I'm like, well, Cactus Con is the Andrew's super cool, and it's a great conference. We could go down and we could just chill. And I'm like, nah, it's too far for you to go. But
yeah, I was like, no. But what's funny is after you brought that up, I was like, well, it just gives me some time to like recuperate. I don't know, so we'll see.
It's like 3 weeks. Come on.
Yeah, it's a whole few weeks. There you go. Yeah, but so it's fun though. I don't want to complain. I'm just saying that you guys are in Hampton Inns. It's not like, you're staying at some luxurious spa resort where people are, feeding you grapes or whatever. It's, real life.
Hey, been to a Hampton Inn lately?
They're pretty amazing.
Wait. Is that literally their slogan? Have you been to a Hampton Inn lately? Like that?
I don't know.
No, but honestly, travel hotel hack. Seth, you could back me up on this if you agree. Hampton Inn actually has pretty darn comfortable beds. Like, they may not have all the amenities of some of the other Hilton brands, but they have coffee, Some of the embassy suites, they actually don't have coffee. You have to buy the little pods. So like that's a huge thing on my don't list. And they also have just really comfortable beds. And those two things are like 1 and 2 on my list for hotels.
Yeah. I mean, like having, staying in like different like, so like, because I've kind of migrated to Hilton brands, right? Like just over the years, and that's where I have status and things. And I'll stay at a Hampton Inn before I'll stay even at like something like the Hilton, like 4 stars, because exactly what you're saying, right? Like I don't know what the beds are going to be like. I don't know what it feels like, there's certain brands that you just kind of, okay, I know what I'm going to get. And most of the Hampton Inns nowadays have been updated in the last couple of years.
Exactly.
So kind of modern, and you get your breakfast and it's serviceable. Yep. Yeah. But to Ken's point, right, traveling by yourself is just no one ever talks about it.
I try to bring my family as much as possible because it's the only thing that keeps me sane.
Yeah, because you hit like 5 o'clock, and most of the people that I go see, guess what? They're going home to their family. They got their, BJJ that they're doing at night or whatever else.
The reason I'm late. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And so it's like, all right, I guess I'm going to go, it's not super glamorous. It's not.
I was going to say on the travel note, Kevin CORSdy is the reason that I got this sucker to organize my cables. Some of them are out of there right now because they're usually completely full. But yeah, I usually have a lot of the stuff that's in here is actually now on my desk. But because you basically move your desk with you when you go on travel. That's really what you're doing. So, anyways, thanks to you, I thought I'm gonna buy an organizer and got an organizer and get. But here's the other pro tip. I have a from Target. You can buy it for like $5 or $6. The little sleeping shades, sleeping mask thing. This thing, sleep mask. The other thing is, and these are the best thing in the world. You can get them for like, I don't remember how much, but so at the Cabela's or Bass Pro or any like hunting place, you can get these earplugs, and you should always carry a jug of those with you for the plane, for hotel room and all that stuff. And then the last thing I was going to mention was this Mike McCabe got me this. I highly recommend it because if you've been flying, your body gets like all banged up from just like traveling. It's the company's name is BRAZYN.
It puts lotion on its skin.
Yeah. So check this stuff out. Boom. It's a foam roller. So you in your hotel room can like foam roll all the strains out and all that stuff. So I always carry this with me. Yeah. And you just like,
is it fold flat? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So you just push these in and it's flat.
That's a good
call. So I use the like this and the sleep mask and the whatever earplugs, and those always let's keep me sane.
My travel hack is and actually I think it was Whitney Champion brought this particular device. So we all have the little travel routers. There's a travel router that is the GL Slate, I think it's called. I'll post the link in Slack, but it's a little travel router. It's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. It's got 2 LAN ports, 1 WAN port. But the cool thing is it's all based on OpenWRT, so it's completely hackable. So you can SSH to it. You can run Python on the bare metal. You can do all that stuff, and it has WireGuard built in, so you can just flip a switch or open VPN if you want. You literally can flip a switch and just be on your VPN like that. So it's really slick. So if you're looking for a good travel router, IoT testing device,
send along that link because I have been looking for a new one, and that sounds right up the alley of what I have been looking for.
There's one other thing I want to mention. Oh shit! I didn't even hit that. There's one thing I meant to mention, which is bringing chip clips. You know those like those clips that you have for chips to put on chips, and using those to secure your curtains, because sometimes the curtains don't fully close correctly, and it lets in a lot of daylight, and you don't necessarily want that. Especially if you do nighttime tests. Sometimes people want you on site at night or like later in the day. Bring chip clips. You can black out your room for real.
Okay, so the other thing that you can use is they always have the pants hangers.
Yes.
Well, flip that hanger up, and then you don't have to bring the chip clips. They've always got the pants hangers.
Brian Glass. Hold on, I'm gonna put this on here. Oh, Brian. For those who can't see this, they're listening. It says Brian Glass, and he says travel tips that your hotel doesn't want you to know. Click here.
Yeah, this is definitely
we've gone off the rails, haven't we?
Oh my God, we have, and we've turned this from an hour podcast into almost 2 hours.
My AirPods are dying. That's how long we've been on this pod. Yeah.
Oh well, we had fun. At least we had fun.
Well, Kevin, before we jump off, are you going anywhere else in the near future? No more talks. No more.
I'm working on some stuff.
Okay.
Don't have any talks planned right now. I specifically I usually go to Code Mash. I didn't do that this year. I'll probably do some B-sides starting in the beginning of next year. Q3 and Q4 have always been my time where I don't do a lot because consulting is always so busy in Q3, Q4 that I've purposely always front-loaded my years. And that's kind of carried over to starting this new job. So I'll probably start back up in the beginning of next year. But I'm working on some stuff. I have some ideas rattling around. I'll definitely put in some CFPs here. But I actually don't have anything on the agenda.
That must actually feel kind of nice to having traveled so much lately. Yeah, I'm sure it does.
But I'm new to the OKR world, so I have these objectives that I have to meet now, and these secure, So it's not just like get through this assessment, get the report out, move to the next assessment, get the report out. It's like, oh, I have these long-term goals and objectives, and I'm going to be hiring some people next year, so I got to work on that. Yeah, so it's a different world as far as that whole thing's considered.
Welcome back to the corporate life. Yeah.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing, but yeah. Well, good. Well, keep us apprised as always, and we'll see everybody online. Ken, is there anything else? I mean, we're headed to somewhere, not
Melbourne, Australia.
There you go, Australia. Yeah, in a couple weeks.
Only a 16-hour flight.
It's going to be super enjoyable.
No, longer than that.
Yeah,
from California, it's a 16-hour flight.
Yeah.
From here, I think total of the travel is going to be like 24 hours there and like 27 hours back. But I convinced Seth to keep his body okay and to upgrade his ticket because I was like, hey, man, you need to be able to lie down for those long flights. And last year when he didn't and he flew a middle seat in economy, he was so screwed up from that. It was unbelievable. Like it took him so long to recover. He's just like, his body took such a beating. So I was like, dude. And he did, to Seth's credit, he was like, all right, you're right.
I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
That was it didn't take that much convincing because I started thinking about, oh man, that was hell. Yeah.
That is the longest.
Yeah. The way I look at it is if you invest in good travel, then you're more likely and less hesitant so you're more likely to accept offers to travel and less hesitant to just sort of not like try and submit, CFTs or CFPs, whatever you want. So like it really is an investment in your like self, but it's hard to look at it like that when you look at cash. But if you can afford it, then it definitely is, it maybe feels like a luxury, but I look at it as seriously like an investment in yourself. Your sanity, yeah, exactly, and just like to continue to do business well, right? Like, I mean, for you as a consultant, for me, it's just training, which isn't really a business, but well, I mean, you know what I mean. It's not my business. Yeah.
Oh, and also
you can have a business from that, but that's not my business. So
another quick travel hack: if you don't book business class, first class, whatever, with your ticket, don't always commit the first time to upgrade when you see the price because it fluctuates. At least on United, it's like every day.
Yes, huge.
It just fluctuates. One day it'll be 3,000, next day it'll be 1,600, the next day it'll be 8, and then it'll go back up and it'll go back down. So
dude, I was having that whole conversation with Mike McCabe because I was like, dude, if you look at it, it does exactly what and you'll know why it went up because if somebody buys one ticket, boom. If two different people buy a ticket, boom, back up. But then they have that cool off period. I think it's like 48 to 72 hours. And then you're back down to usually like the second tier. And, I mean, you'll eventually get down to what you said, which is the cheapest one. So you got to figure out, like you said, that the sort of the cheapest in between, and then find and that's how I do it. Cause I mean, you can get for like a few $100 versus a few $1,000. It's that serious.
Yep. Yeah. All right. That's my last.
Sorry. Yeah. No, we're way over.
So we're gonna have a new a new spin-off series that's Travel Hacks by Kevin.
Hey man, thanks for coming on again. I really appreciate it. We can't wait to have you on again. I mean, I know you're going to cook up some good stuff, and you always do, and you always have good stuff to talk about. And you're just a guy who like really embraces technology and security and the next thing, and like, kind of constantly picking things apart and figuring out, hacks and stuff like that. So your research is always fun. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
I know this isn't a hobby for everyone. I'm one of those weird people where this is like, I enjoy it. I work and it's my hobby. But yeah, man, I love the show. You guys know I'm like a super fan. I watch or listen every week. I'm always posting photos of the car play. And now that I have a commute, it's like even more, I'm like anxious for more podcasts to come out. No, I'm very grateful to be on again. Love the show. So.
Appreciate it. All right. Great. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. And yeah, we'll catch everybody online. Enjoy the 1-40-minute podcast this week. So we'll probably again for a while, but you never know.
Right? You broke a record.
Absolute AppSec at night. Right.
Yeah. Well, we missed last week, so it's made up for it. All right.
Okay. Ciao.
If I can figure out how to end the broadcast.